Welcome to Tardisian Files.
Hello listeners! Christmas Day 2024 was a very merry day for many of us Whovians around the world, and with it came one of the most memorable Christmas specials to date. And so naturally, to welcome the new year, this episode will be dedicated to reviewing Joy to the World. Starting with the recap, the Doctor arrives at the Time Hotel in the 43rd century, a resort that sells luxury holidays in the form of time portals to other eras, offering the clients a chance to go back and spend time in a historic hotel in their desired era of Earth's history, going as far back as the Cretaceous period. While in the hotel, the Doctor meets a friendly porter named Trev. The pair notice a nervous-looking man carrying a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist, arousing suspicion from the Doctor, as the man has not once looked up to admire the overwhelming interior of the hotel. The Doctor tasks Trev with keeping watch over the man, while he takes on the guise of room service to investigate the hotel further. Unbeknownst to them both, the briefcase the man was carrying is in fact controlling the show. It switches hosts to the hotel bartender, disintegrating its previous holder. The briefcase soon makes its way to Trev, and then to the hotel's manager, a Silurian man. Both the Silurian man and the Doctor end up both making their way to a door leading to a hotel in 2024, where they meet a young woman called Joy, who becomes the briefcase's next host. The Doctor manages to get the case to open to see what's inside. It's a starseed, an artificial sun in the penultimate stages of being born. With the case open, its control over Joy begins to weaken, though she urges the Doctor to close the case before it detonates the starseed early. Unable to think of the PIN code required to relock the case, the Doctor then uses the temporal synchronous nature of the Time Hotel and wills a bootstrap paradox loop into effect, which summons an older version of himself to the room with the PIN code. Joy proceeds to go with the elder Doctor, who leaves the younger version to spend a year on Earth working at the hotel until he can find a new room with a new doorway to the Time Hotel the following Christmas. In that time, the younger Doctor bonds with the hotel clerk Anita, who becomes his best friend. The elder Doctor then tries to stop Joy, who has succumbed to the briefcase's control again, and they eventually end up in an outdoor forest room, seemingly in a jungle. There, the Doctor breaks Joy's mental conditioning by making her angry, and in her outburst, she reveals that she'd been spending the last 4 Christmases alone since her mother had died in 2020, as she hadn't been allowed to visit her in hospital to say goodbye due to the pandemic. The Doctor comforts her, and then activates the briefcase's communication system, which takes on the voice of the deceased manager, who reveals that the briefcase and the starseed is the creation of Vilengard. Unable to develop time travel technology themselves, the weapons manufacturer came up with a plan to use the Time Hotel in 4202 AD to deposit the starseed in an earlier time period, so that, by their native time period, the starseed will bloom on Earth, destroying the planet and creating a new star, which they intend to sell as a near-infinite energy source to the highest bidder. The Doctor then declares that this feat is impossible, as, according to his calculations, they would need at least 65 million years for the starseed to be ready. Though, in a twist of cosmic irony, Joy yells to alert the Doctor to an oncoming threat, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The dinosaur swallows the briefcase, which takes over the dinosaur, and the Joy and the Doctor escape back to the Time Hotel, where they're contacted by the Vilengard consciousness interface by Trev's data ghost. Trev's data ghost has retained his free will, and using his access to the Vilengard systems, he guides the Doctor through how to track the starseed to its next location. The Doctor and Joy find the starseed buried in a sealed crypt somewhere in an early time period on Earth's history, though they're unable to open the crypt and the starseed is about to bloom. The Doctor tells Joy to stay behind with the seed as he rigs up a pulley system, using rope from one of the time periods joining it to a train in another, which forces the crypt open. Unbeknownst to him, the starseed is still linked to Joy's mind. When the crypt opens, she takes the case. Returning to the crypt, the Doctor finds Joy has climbed a hidden set of stairs leading to the top of the mountain that the crypt was built within. The Doctor sees that Joy has merged with the star, and tells her that she will die if she lets the seed bloom, and that Vilengard are still in control. However, Joy explains that Vilengard are nothing, and the starseed has become more than just a star, but a collective consciousness of all the people that the briefcase took over. It is its own entity now, and together they have all decided that they will take the star within Joy and bloom far away from Earth, becoming a symbol of hope rather than a machine of war. Joy then flies away before advising the Doctor not to travel alone. Upon the starseed blooming, the Doctor realises that he is in Bethlehem in 1 AD, and Joy has become the biblical star. In 2020, we see Joy's mother in hospital, who sees the star in the sky, and it seems that she is taken into the afterlife by the star. We also see Anita, who gets recruited to the Time Hotel, recommended by the Doctor, and finally, in a sweet cameo, we see Ruby Sunday, seeing the star outside of her window as she gets a call from her mother. Okay, this episode really hit home for myself and for many other viewers, I'm sure. A very emotional, but also very relevant plotline. On one hand, there's the wonder of the Time Hotel being an amazing plot device, as well as a convenient way of explaining the obvious bootstrap paradox within the episode, along with Vilengard being the main culprit. I think that their inclusion in this episode was actually extremely important and fit the episode very well. On one hand, it was very ironic that a weapons corporation, which specialises in seeding the universe with pain and sorrow, ended up creating one of the oldest and most universally recognisable symbols of peace and joy for the human race. Then there's the two main side characters, Anita and Joy. Anita providing the Doctor with a much-needed anchor during his year on Earth and a voice of comfort and reason, bringing to light his loneliness and the saying of Auld Lang Syne, a very poignant message to receive at Christmas because, as many viewers will know, while Christmas can be a very merry occasion with lots of joy, it can also be a bit sad, especially if there's people you desperately wish you could be with, but for one reason or another, you can't. The Auld Lang Syne message and Anita's subplot, I think, was a very hopeful way of portraying this sadness and showing that there is a positive way for people to address this in their own lives. Then we have Joy, a character who was very relatable for many viewers because she very explicitly embodied a lot of the emotions that people in the UK in particular may be feeling 4 years on from the start of the pandemic. While we're finally out of the pandemic, in reality, its effects are still felt by many people and their families, especially due to the Partygate scandal which came to light in 2021. While I won't go into the politics too much, I will say that there are almost certainly still people in the present day who have either been impacted by the Partygate scandal, and almost everyone will know somebody else who has too. However, Joy just wasn't used as a political metaphor here. She was also a very strong, empowering character. In the space of 45 minutes, she went from being a lonely girl at Christmas to someone who took her pain and did something incredible with it. She became the original sign of hope in one of the oldest religions on Earth, allowing her to be there for her mother when she passed away, and inspire countless people through the eons with a message of hope and new beginnings. That to me was possibly one of the best uses of a single episode companion in Doctor Who to date. Finally, on the subject of side characters, I also like the fact that even though the different characters met by the Doctor in the different time periods only appeared briefly, not only were each of them in some way pivotal for the final resolution of the episode, in some way or another, but each of them had a happy ending, whether it was living through an air raid unscathed in the 1940s, or being a young woman deciding to move on from her same-sex lover in the 1960s, or mountaineers camping on Mount Everest in the 1950s, able to see the wonders of the night sky on Christmas. Each of them had a small but touching ending. Even Ruby, who made a fleeting appearance, appeared content with her life at the moment, feeling the Christmas spirit and receiving a call from her mother. As for the cons, I'm going to do something that I rarely do in these reviews and declare this episode free of any writing cons. This may just be my opinion, of course, but I personally really enjoyed this episode, and I can't fault the plot in the slightest. Every plot device and character was used in the right way, with the right amount of screen time, and all the elements came together to create a tear-jerking, heartwarming Christmas special, and I personally rank this as one of the best Christmas specials to date, if not the very best. I also want to take a moment to talk about the theories surrounding this episode. There's two main theories I've seen on Reddit, and both of them are fairly circumstantial. However, I thought they were worth mentioning. Shout out to a good friend of mine who brought these theories to my attention. You know who you are, mate. The first, being the more obvious one, is the outcome of this episode was either exactly what Villengard had intended, or they used it to make the best out of a bad situation. The theory goes that they either deliberately created the starseed to become sentient and used it to inspire Christianity, to ensure the creation of the paper mainframe, or they took advantage of the accidental creation of the church, who had later become one of their biggest clients and victims of their warmongering fraud schemes. This seems like less of a theory and more common sense, and I think the latter of which, Villengard taking advantage of losing their sale, and makes the most sense, since they would have had to have replaced their lost revenue somehow. The second theory is that Anita, sharing the name with the actress Anita Dobson, who plays Mrs. Flood, may be the younger version of Mrs. Flood. The evidence for this is of course sparse, however it would certainly explain Mrs. Flood's travel case, which had stickers from places such as Clom, New York, and other places that we know the Doctor has been to. Because if Anita is Mrs. Flood, then she could have easily used the Time Hotel to follow the Doctor through his adventures, spending years watching him, and potentially even seeing his alternate futures, which explained how Mrs. Flood knew about Sutek's return. And then of course there's the fact that Susan Twist's character was called Susan, so maybe Anita Dobson's character's first name is Anita. Certainly a bit of a stretch, but after my premature dismissal of the Sutek theory, it's suffice to say that I'm far more open-minded when it comes to theories these days. What did you guys think of the episode? Did you agree with our review? Did you notice something we missed? Let us know in the comments section on our YouTube channel and our social media pages. You can listen to all episodes of the podcast on YouTube, YouTube Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Tardisian Files Podcasts to get the latest updates on upcoming episodes. And as always, see you next time on Tardisian Files.